Hi and welcome to the second video of my video series on my PhD research on South Shore. My name is Tilman, and in this video I talk about crime maps and how they portray South Shore as a community. And the reason why I wanted to look at those maps in particular is that they are also produced by the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Sun-Times, as I have explained in my previous video, that they are also using visual tools to depict and portray violence and crime that happened in South Shore. And I wanted to understand what knowledge do those crime maps produce about South Shore. So to understand how visual information actually also contribute to perhaps the stigmatization of South Shore. And so I analyzed the crime maps that can be found on the Chicago Tribune's and Sun-Times homepage. So they're publicly available and updated frequently with the latest shootings, fatal and non-fatal in the case of the Tribune, and only homicides in the case of the Chicago Sun-Times. And so you can find them on their homepage, and they depict where exactly across Chicago did a shooting or a homicide happen. So here you can see screenshots of crime maps produced by the Chicago Sun-Times. And you can zoom in and out of these crime maps, so you can have an entire view of Chicago, but you can also then zoom into South Shore more particularly, and you can then identify exactly where, on which street, for example, which street corner, in which apartment building did a homicide in this case happen. So what do crime maps do? What knowledge do they produce? And in my PhD, I argue that crime maps, similar to newspaper articles by the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Sun-Times, reproduce this image of the community as a violent and a crime-influenced community, because they don't show anything else than the geographical information about a shooting or a homicide. In the case of the Chicago Tribune, we don't learn about any circumstances of the event, whereas the Chicago Sun-Times does provide some information about age and gender of the victim, but again, similar to the newspaper articles that I have described in the previous video, we don't learn enough about the circumstances of the crime. So we only receive the territorial information, the geographical information about a shooting or a homicide. We know now exactly where in South Shore a crime happened. And by providing this spatial distribution, the crime maps basically fragment the community into safer and unsafe spaces. This is what I argue in my PhD. So for the outsider who is not familiar with the community, certain spaces in the community are particularly portrayed as violent prone, because we have seen a lot of incidences already happening in this year, and the crime maps provide a very good overview of those spaces. So the outsider can exactly identify which part of the community seems to be less safe. And this fragmentation, I argue in my PhD, of the community into safer and unsafe spaces is another form of territorial stigmatization, because the community is reduced to the occurrence of violence and crime. So the crime maps are an important element in visualizing violence and crime and in reproducing territorial stigmatization. So for me, something that I did not really learn enough about in my time in South Shore is whether or not crime maps are actually something that you as a community also see in your daily lives when you read the newspapers. I mean, these crime maps are available online. So I was wondering, do you encounter these crime maps in your daily lives? How important are they for you in learning about South Shore? And have you encountered them before? So these are questions that would be interesting to hear and learn more. So please leave a comment below the video. And if you have any ideas, any information you want to share about crime maps, and if you have so far actually viewed these crime maps online, and whether or not you also agree with my analysis of crime maps as tools to fragment the community into spaces that are safe and those spaces that are unsafe. So please let me know what you think about them, and thank you very much for listening.